sometimes it can be harder to decide when to sell stocks than when to actually buy them. Buying can be easier, especially if you're accumulating over longer periods of time while you're saving for financial independence or retirement, but sometimes you got to sell them too. So when should you sell stocks? We're going to answer that question coming up on Investing Education with me, Mr. B. Welcome to the channel where we help you to learn fast so you can become a confident and successful investor. If that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Okay, so when should you sell stocks? Let's look at it from two big buckets. One bucket is your overall portfolio. Should you be adjusting your overall portfolio? Like let's say you've got 80% in stocks, should you, and it's gone up a little bit, or do you want to bring that down from 70 to 60 to 50, overall portfolio. And then we're going to talk a little bit about later about individual stocks or individual mutual funds or exchange traded funds or ETF holdings. When should you sell those? So let's start with your overall kind of portfolio mix. So when should you sell your stock portion of portfolio or adjust that down? So a couple things around that. One is think about like when your short-term needs change, right? So stocks are basically for long-term growth, ideally, especially if you're a buy and hold investor. But if things change in the short term, you might need to change your percentage of stocks. Maybe you're looking to buy a house and you're saving for that. Maybe you've got some planned medical bills, things that is coming up, so you might need to adjust for that. Or for college funds or job changes, all these different things that is coming up sooner in this short term, that's when the time maybe to sell some stocks. Certainly, if you've crossed the finish line, yay, that means you're retired or you've become financially independent. You don't need the stocks to grow. You're already crossed the finish line. You're there. You still want to have some stocks. I'm financially independent, but I own quite a bunch of stocks. I have about 80% still in stocks, even because I'm looking at that longer term life expectancy because I retired early. But if you retire, let's say later, you can certainly reduce that stock level because you've made it, right? You've done great. Another thing to think about in your overall portfolio portion is your risk tolerances change. Can you sleep at night, right? Maybe it's like, yeah, I had a lot of stocks when I was younger, but now I'm married. Maybe I have a kid or two. Maybe I'm a dog or a cat, maybe a house. All these things might affect you as far as changing your risk tolerance. So if your risk tolerance changes and you're not able to sleep at night and you're like, God, I'm watching the stock market all the time, it's driving me crazy, maybe it's time to pull back a little bit. And then another time as far as pulling back is if you're a disciplined investor, there's times when you need to rebalance your portfolio. If the stock market's got this big run up and you want to be, 70% stocks, 30% in bonds or cash or other things, and now you're at 80% or 85% stocks, you're out of balance from what your original goals were. That also ties into your risk tolerance. So you might need to sell some stocks just to bring it back in balance. Another way you can also rebalance too is actually for new money you have coming in, actually instead of selling your stocks, you could buy more of the other stuff to put them in that percentage balance. So I'm staying steady on stocks, but I'm buying more bonds or cash to get it back to that, let's say 70-30, if that was your mix percentage, whatever your percentage might be. But the idea is that you're using your own discipline to rebalance and it's adjusting up or down. And when stocks rise, that's when you should sell to get back in balance. So those are some things to look at from the big macro. When should I sell stocks? Look at my overall portfolio. If we look at individual stocks or mutual funds or exchange traded funds, as far as those individual holdings, when should we sell those? Well, a couple of things to think about. And if you got a stock or you're thinking about and think, should I sell that? Here's some things to kind of run through your mind. One, does it fit your current strategy? Maybe you bought that growth stock because it was part of your growth part of portfolio. Maybe you bought a dividend stock for income, but does it fit your current strategy? Are you going more away from growth stocks to more maybe quote safer dividend stocks or income stocks? Maybe you're getting close to that retirement or are retired and you want to shift from growth to dividend or income paying. So you might sell some stocks or mutual funds or ETFs because your strategy is changing. Also then look at the company's strategy and their performance. Maybe that's changed there. Maybe you had a great company like GE was a great company forever, and then they fell on hard times. They're coming back now, but they had some massive hard times. They cut their dividends, all sorts of terrible things, really out of whack with their strategy. And so you wouldn't buy them again because you look at them and say, wow, they're just really struggling. Maybe it's time to set out, either cut my losses or take my profits. And one way to look at that too is look at, let's say, an individual stock or mutual fund or ETF and say, would I buy that now today? Knowing what I know today, it's something you already own. Would I buy that new as a brand new holding? And if you look and say, no, I wouldn't. I just don't believe in the company strategy. I don't believe in their growth prospects. I don't believe in the stock price appreciation. Not sure about the dividend if they're paying one. Like, I wouldn't buy that today. That's a good indication that maybe you should sell that stock, take whatever profits or losses you have, and take that money and buy something different. And I mentioned lastly is taking profits. Sometimes you had a stock that's done great. You need to sell not necessarily all of it, but maybe a portion of it because you need to take that profits and put that into something new or something different to diversify your portfolio, maybe even bonds or cash or crypto, whatever it might be. There's times to take profits. If you're a very active trader, you're very attuned to this, where if you're like a day trader or somebody who's trading very frequently, you know that it's not only cutting and reducing your losses with things like stop losses, so it sells automatically to kind of control your losses, but you also have to know when to take your profits, and that's where you're using things like charting or technical analysis, meaning some fundamental analysis, to look at that and say, is this the time to take profits? So in my courses, we get into all that stuff as far as the analysis stuff, whether you're looking at fundamental ratios like PE ratio, PEG ratio, dividend yields, all that stuff, or technical analysis like charting and looking at moving averages or relative strength indexes, RSI, in one of my favorites, Bollinger Bands, all those different things that you can look at that can help tell you too, for individual holdings, whether it's now is the time to sell. All right, so when should you sell stocks? I hope this gave you a guide both from a macro level and more of a micro level. The thing is, it's all up to you. You are the investor, right? So you have to decide. And if you make bad, and don't get too worried if it turns out to be a bad decision. You might sell and the stock goes up. Okay, it happens. You can't time the market exactly. You're more looking at it from your overall strategy. So it's perfectly okay. And don't try to time that market in that sense to be at the very, very peak to sell. Don't worry, it's so rare to happen, right? So with that, use this as a guide and follow your own strategy. And with that, I wish you all the very best of luck. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Check out information in the description, some free courses and stuff. And I hope to see you in another video along the way.